It looked like Miss Harpreet Jill already joined us. So please allow me to introduce to you Miss Harpreet Jill. Hello, Miss Harpreet Jill.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Please allow me to introduce Ms. Harpreet Jill, Manager Global Education, Business and Trade from Tasmanian Government. It's wonderful to have you with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me, and good luck for the series.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. So now I'm going to introduce our three wonderful speakers today. The first two speakers for the first presentation are Dr. Misty Cook and Dr. Mark Brooke. Each will present on effective teaching practices in supporting students in and beyond class time in an online academic literacy model. Dr. Misty Cook is Deputy Director and Senior Lecturer at the Center for English Language Communication, Fellow at the College of Alice and Peter Tan, and Fellow at the National University of Singapore Teaching Academy at the National University of Singapore. Misty has won multiple university teaching excellence awards and conducted multiple research projects and published papers on academic literacies, peer feedback in language education, English across the curriculum, and the use of technologies to enhance teaching and learning. She is on the editorial board for a number of peer-reviewed journals such as Language and Language Teaching Journals, Journal of Interdisciplinary Studies in Education, and Asia Pacific Journal of Education. Dr. Mark Brooke is a senior lecturer at the Center for English Language Communication, National University of Singapore. He currently designs and teaches undergraduate academic writing courses combining sociology of sport and English for academic purposes. He has co-authored a book on academic literacy development entitled A Practical Guide to Projects by Learning with World Scientific Policy in Singapore. In the academic literacy field, he predominantly investigates practical classroom applications of systemic functional linguistics and legitimation code theory. He has published multiple studies on these themes in journals such as Reflective Practice, Teaching in Higher Education, the European Journal of Applied Linguistics, and TEFL and the Asian Journals of the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. It's our true pleasure to have two wonderful speakers for the first presentation. Today, please say hello in some way to them. Maybe you can turn, you can use reaction symbol. Okay, thank you very much. And our third speaker today is Dr. Eritrea from Singapore Institute of Technology. Dr. Eritrea will present on monitoring students' online learning experience under COVID-19, Singapore University's findings. Dr. Chua is an associate professor at the Singapore Institute of Technology and holds a concurrent appointment as the Deputy Director of College, the University Teaching and Learning Unit. In this role, he actively collaborates with colleagues on faculty development. He has also been actively involved in the university efforts to introduce online learning in response to COVID-19, including monitoring its students' online learning experience over time. It's an honor to have him with us today as well. Thank you very much. And now, now it's 4:15. Each presenter will have around 20 to 30 minutes to present on the topic, and then we will have around 15 to 20 minutes for discussion. So now over to you, Dr. Misty Cook and Dr. Mark Brooke. Thank you very much. You can start sharing your slide now.
Thank you, Vin. Mark, do you want to share your?
Sure.
Okay.
Can you see my slides, everybody?
Yeah.
Yes,
All right.
we do.
Yes, clear.
Yes.
All right. That's great. Well, thank you, Vinto, for the introductions, and thank you to all of the experts at UTAS who have given sessions, and I'm sure that everyone who's attended them has found that, you know, we've learned some essential knowledge that's required for online learning. My name is Mark, as you've just said, and my colleague's name is Misty, and we're both from the CELC at the National University of Singapore. And this is the title of our talk today. So, effective teaching practices in supporting students in and beyond class time in an online academic literacy module. Our objective is to really discuss the importance of strategies to connect with students inside and outside the classroom through online means. And so we're really focusing on how we've tried to effectively develop teacher-student interaction and how our understanding of teaching in relation to social and cognitive presences has informed us. Both Misty and I are part of a program called the Ideas and Exposition modules, and it's normally a classroom program. So we normally have seminar-based classrooms where we have 16 maximum in the room, and there's a strong focus on a dialogic pedagogy. We have 4 hours a week with the students, so 48 hours in all over the semester. And the idea is really to have a seminar-based room where we can have a lot of academic discussion about topics of interest. My topic relates to sports sociology, Misty's topic relates to psychology and skills for the workplace and for social purposes. And you know, we do try to get students to elaborate on discussions, to justify contributions, to pose questions, and to evaluate both our discourses and our students' discourses. And very often a typical task is students presenting an academic paper and presenting their views on it. But of course, all of that changed very significantly with COVID, and really tipped the balance away from it being a face-to-face seminar-based instructional environment to one that was, first of all, a bit difficult to deal with, because it was really emergency remote teaching. So we really had to shift from one day to the next, from 100% classroom to 100% online. And we're in our third iteration now of the whole semester being online. The first iteration was half-half. We had to suddenly shift. And so everyone's been working from home and trying to update our home accessories to deal with it. But yes, we were hit quite badly, and we haven't gone back to class yet either. And so, of course, there are many issues that come with 100% online teaching, especially in an environment where, there is fear, there is, it was a pandemic, still is. And so, we have to be aware of the kinds of shifts in mentality that this may cause students. So the emotional distance might be an issue. Students might feel difficulty, expressing themselves, their worries, their concerns. Teachers might not be able to, view student issues as easily as they can in the classroom. And there may be feelings of isolation and anonymity produced by the remote teaching. And so, it's important to have conceptual understanding of what an online environment does, and, the kind of research that's been done to show effective online environments. And of course, Wenger's COP model is essential, I think. And, this is me learning and me showing you how I've learned, you know, what are the essential characteristics of a fully online environment. And so I feel that these 4 concepts need to be present and ongoing throughout: community, identity, practice, and meaning. And some of the findings that I'm going to share with you from my practice involve 2 of these. So what we're sharing with you is really spirals of action research. So teaching and learning from innovation, learning from testing and investigating, refining. And, you know, as I said, we've already had 2.5 semesters, and this is the 3rd full semester. So we're seeing some reiterations of action research projects. And I would say that, you know, openness, responsibility, and wholeheartedness are essential for this kind of research. The idea that you have to be open to try new things, you have to be responsible for your acts as a teacher, and you need to really want to make change. So these 3 concepts are always present. So for my research, there are really 3 main questions that I wanted to ask. Does the use of an asynchronous discussion forum encourage an inclusive environment? Can Zoom be used effectively to provide an inclusive educational environment? And can teacher corrective feedback be more dialogic? And to what extent might it increase students' feelings of inclusion? And so the first full semesters that I did online, I did some research, and I'm going to give you examples of some of those issues related to the questions. So first of all, in the first action research project, in the first full online teaching that I did about a year ago now, I asked the students, why haven't you been using our asynchronous discussion forum? And I noticed that, you know, there were very few views, 25 max, and very few posts. And so this is the kind of feedback I got from students. I haven't had time. I don't see the need for it. It doesn't come to mind. Haven't had any questions. Yeah, so clearly I thought to myself, all right, well, there's an issue here. And this brings up meaning by Wenger. So the idea that we should spend moments thinking about why things are done online and evaluating their significance. And so this 2nd and 3rd iteration, I've been sending students emails saying, I've collected the conversations, I've collected the questions, I'm sending them here for you. You know, these forum tasks are important because I've also been uploading the Zoom session recordings. And I've been noticing a very big increase in the number of posts, the number of views. So that's one reflection. It needs to be ongoing and thought well, an asynchronous discussion forum. The second thing I've been working with is Zoom and the synchronous virtual learning platform. The first time I did it, I was getting mixed views. Some students were enjoying it, as you can see on this left-hand side. Some were saying it's not easy, you know, I'm missing the person-to-person interaction. And although this is still existing, what I am finding is that there are a couple of things I can bring in to help that. So for example, instead of getting students to present all the papers on Zoom, I'm giving them the option to record it. I'm also using Google Docs when they go into breakout rooms, because you can't record the breakout room discussions on Zoom. So this gives us a text to use as a group, as a whole group after the discussions. And I think that this relates well to identity and practice from Wenger. So the idea that learners have some control on the content and that they're discussing the materials online effectively. So they're happier now with more time. And also it gives me the chance to evaluate their presentations and give them feedback. So this is a much more effective use of Zoom. With regards to feedback to students, before, when we had class-to-class interactions, I tended to use imperatives a lot when I gave feedback, to written corrective feedback. But now without the face-to-face, where I can actually just, you know, explain what the imperative's about, I find I'm using more modality, so to give some dialogic space between our conversations, and also a taxonomy, a typology of communicative moves from Walker. So being aware of the kinds of moves that I'm using when I'm writing to students. And yeah, and there are some examples here of an informed opinion and an encourage. So at the top in italics is the student's text and mine below. And again, here there's an example of a counter and a critique. So I'm more aware of the moves. I'm moving much further away from just imperatives without modality. And so, you know, I'm getting emails where students are showing, you know, that they're confident, that they're relaxed. So these are questions that my students embedded in their texts. So they're taking on the same kind of dialogic conversations with me, asking me questions within their texts. And they're, you know, using this kind of reflection, haha, warmest regards, which shows a little bit of, trust, I think, and confidence. And in the feedback, you know, talking about me caring for them comes through all the time. So I think that this helps, being mindful of teacher voice and being mindful of the different acts that we use. And then finally, I'm doing some corpus research now on these moves, and I do find that encourage moves appear a lot, and they're part of a softening before the actual instruct move very often. So here's an example, good synthesis. So to encourage, but try not to repeat. So I'm finding that this encouragement is affecting some good confidence and trust building with students. Thank you. So just to sum up, for the asynchronous discussion forums, you know, using guided questions, relating the learning functions of the forums, sending the students the questions, sending the students a week of dialogue as a package to help them to keep up with what's going on, and recording the sessions can be very useful, and they can see those. And then for Zoom, patterns need to be varied. Feedback can be given on recordings. Breakout room discussions should be accompanied with a Google Doc. And then for corrective feedback, try to be as interpersonal as you can, and try to encourage as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mark, do you want me to share, or do you want to? Okay,
I'll stop share for
okay,
you.
sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Hold on for a moment while I set up. Okay. Okay, can you see my slide, everyone? Is that clear? Yep, okay, cool. Then I will start.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Whoops, it's gone back to the other mode. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me start. Okay, yes, so carrying on from what Mark was saying about building a community of practice, even when the education is done online, it's critical for us to strike a good balance between showing our students that we are there to support the students inside and outside the classroom. So for my part, I'm going to show you what I have done in my course that is similar to Mark's, in that we both teach academic literacy. So we teach our students how to do writing, but using content in psychology to facilitate, to help them learn academic literacies. So for my part, I'm going to be talking about building a community using a good balance between teacher and student presence, as well as cognitive presence that is reported in the literature. So I will give you a quick review of what the literature is, what I did to implement it, and what the students thought about the way I adopted this pedagogy. Okay, so I'm having some trouble with the sharing of the slides. Okay. I think that would be okay. All right.
Shall I do it, Misty, for you?
I'm not sure why I'm having trouble, but yes, that would be good, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you need to stop sharing.
Yep,
I think
okay.
first. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so yeah, so that's what I will do. Next slide, please, Mark. Okay, so just to give you a quick overview of what the literature cites. So the definition of teacher presence is that even when it's an online education course, instructors should responsibly present the content and facilitate the teaching so that the students have a good experience. And this extends to facilitating the content inside the classroom and outside. So scaffolding inside the classroom. And then as you just heard from Mark as well, scaffolding for the students with feedback outside the classroom so that students have multiple opportunities to learn. In terms of the social presence, it's really just to say that beyond the students needing the instructors to be there, students also need to feel connected in a sense that they feel they have the peer support as well as instructor support. Because with these two types of support, then the students are able to develop more critical thinking and higher order thinking as a result of the instructors helping them and discussions amongst their peers. So both are important outside and inside the classroom. And of course, very importantly too, the cognitive presence, which is to ensure, just like with any face-to-face learning, to engage the students with content that they can relate to, that they can find relevance with. Okay, thank you. Next, Mark, please. Okay, so just to give you to end a quick literature review, just to show you that there's substantial literature online to show you the benefits of having the balance between teacher and social presence with the students, as well as connecting with them cognitively. So the research shows that when the instructors are present, they're able to engage the students in interactive learning inside and outside the classroom, because students will feel a sense of belonging to a community of practice that Mark was referring to. And so with that, researchers have found that students have increased engagement, and it's less likely that they will drop out in the online education courses. Thank you, Mark. Next. Okay, so as Mark introduced earlier, we teach a 13-week content and language integrated learning, and Mark used sports, whereas I use psychology to teach our students a range of academic literacy skills. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so what I did to promote in an online education course in every lesson to promote the teacher and student interactions, what I did was to ensure that I strike a good balance between my talking, because students need to have that input, recap, for example. In what I did in my class is that somewhere in the class, whether it's at the beginning or in the middle or at the end, I would do a recap on the content or introduce the content or do a recap of the readings that I assign students to do. But as well as that, I would always make sure that students also have time to complete their group task. Roughly is about 20 to 30 minutes, but even if I cannot give them 30 minutes, it will be a short task that requires 20 minutes. And come back and we would hold most of the class for class discussion. So that's where students may ask questions about what they didn't understand, or they present the readings for the lesson. Okay, and then at the end, I will do a quick recap. Even if we say don't have 15 minutes in total, I will make sure that I will spend at least 5 to 10 minutes doing a quick recap and wrap up the lessons, just so that the students find a conclusion to the key points that they should learn from the lesson. And also, again, a lot of literature, I'm sure you're aware, has shown that online education is important and it's effective, but students will also likely suffer from Zoom fatigue that is cited a lot in online courses. So I make sure that at least the students are given 1 5-minute break somewhere in the lesson, probably halfway through. Yeah, so that's how I strike a balance between teacher and student interactions. Thank you, Mark. Next slide, please. Okay, so the third thing is, of course, a cognitive presence. So for this, I make sure I choose topics that students will find relevant and hopefully interesting. So in all the readings that I give the students to teach, to scaffold the content, what I did was that I chose topics like leadership or psychology in politics that students will find interesting because it revolves, I mean, politics is everywhere. So either we talk about local politics or more global. So in the last year, for example, we've been talking about Donald Trump and his leadership on rolling out the vaccines, for example. And so that is something that students find relevance to in even the theoretical readings that they have to do. So every lesson or before the lesson, I ask the students to do a reading related to the topic. So here it would be about psychology and politics. And then the part 2 is to link it to examples like Nelson Mandela. Whatever the students find relevant, they can choose. So us being in Singapore, of course, we talk about the political settings here, whether it's to do with the election or whether it's to do again with the rollout of the vaccines, how successful or not successful it is. So yeah, that's what we do, linking readings to examples to engage the students cognitively. Next, please, Mark. Okay, just to give you an example too, something that is closer to the students that they can relate to, still scaffolding the requirements to how to understand a piece of academic text. But here, just to give you another example, is about psychology in education. So what motivates students like themselves in higher education to learn, what might be the individual differences in terms of the way students learn. So we talk about, you know, thesis statements and then the paragraph developments as well as language accuracy. So using the content in the academic text, I would, again, like what I've shown you in the last slide, just to annotate on the articles because it could be quite content heavy, just to show students where to locate information and what the purpose of a particular chunk of text is as well. And so again, linking it back to real life examples to show how they learn, how could they find relevance in the way the literature says they should learn and the way they learn. So a bit of reflection in students' learning habits as well. So that students should find interesting. Okay, so yes, give students reading, then we do a quick recap and the students do their presentations that extends beyond the reading, really is about application of the paper. So that students will hopefully find more relevance in that. Okay, next please, Mark. Okay, so this is what I have found. Okay, so in terms of instructor and social presence, that means whether I aim to achieve a good balance between teacher and student presence, social presence. So what I did, based on the model that I showed you before, I asked the students whether I was able to, how engaged they were in learning and whether even with the limited time that I gave them in explaining in the 15 minutes or 20 minutes in total in the class, whether I was able to engage them in the learning. So as you can see on the results here, the orange is somewhat interesting, engaging. The gray is interesting, so better. And option 4 is the students were more than they had anticipated, more engaging and interesting than they had anticipated. So that's what they review. So that is a good sign. So I think this suggests to me that it is important to let the students have a say, voice out their opinions and give them a chance to demonstrate their understanding before we come in and give them feedback. Okay, and so the Zoom discussion also is interesting. So this is the majority of the lessons where the students reported also here that the lessons were engaging, interesting, and thankfully as well here, the gray and the blue is higher. So not just interesting, but they were very engaged in the learning in the lessons. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so in terms of the content as well, so the content, so for us, as we say, I use psychology to teach academic literacy. So I asked the students what topics they were interested in particular, and so they found that actually only a very few topics, the theoretical parts is something that they found less interesting. So what they found most interesting were things that they could relate to. So what motivates them to learn? The first area, reasons for their intrinsic and extrinsic motivation in learning. Leadership was a very popular one. And of course, the psychology in education. And so the students report that although you can see here right down the two bottom lines, psychology in business. So we talked about in workplaces, what motivates colleagues and leaders to work in a business setting. What makes teamwork successful? perhaps was more remote for them, as was with politics. So they found interesting, a large majority, but a few also say that it was of low interest. So definitely topics that students can relate to, that they find relevance, even if theoretical, they would find more engaging and interesting. So the cognitive presence is absolutely crucial in engaging the students throughout our online courses. Okay, thank you, Mark. So in terms of the academic literacies as well, so at the beginning, a lot of the students in our courses say, we have heard your courses, not just mine, but Mark's as well, and our range of our colleagues who use content to teach academic literacy, they all say that it's very difficult and they don't like writing. A large majority of our students don't like writing academic texts, predominantly because they're not familiar with it and they're overwhelmed by the fastness of the task. So a lot of them were afraid of it, but nonetheless, a lot of the students were engaged in the writing as well, which is very, very positive. So the blue is definitely high interest. So that is a good sign. So what they found most important and interesting to learn about is the writing the thesis statement, extracting key ideas or using the thesis to signal what the ideas are and how to use the rest of, to ensure that the rest of their essays are in alignment with the thesis. They recognized that that was interesting and engaging to learn. The body text, how to develop an argument throughout the essays in body paragraphs, how to use evidence and recognize what is credible and non-credible evidence also is important, as well as conclusion, how to sum up an argument, and writing the implications part is crucial for them as well. Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, so just to show you as well, this particular slide shows you that in our courses, we have 3 assignments. Assignment 1 should be the easiest assignment because the texts are given to them and they just have to extract key ideas and respond to a key idea. Second assignment is somewhat more applicable because it relates to comparing different leadership styles, but maybe perhaps comparing autocratic versus a democratic leader, but they write a compare and contrast essays. So that was very much guided. The third assignment is definitely the most challenging assignment because it was unguided. The students were able to choose a topic of their free will. They can choose whatever we had discussed and extend beyond what we talked about in class and writing expository essays. So for this, they really need to build a strong argument, extract the theories, and find the evidence that would support their argument. Okay, so I just want to show you what the students felt about in these 3 particular assignments. Next, please, Mark. Okay, so if you look at this, you will see that even though the level of difficulty increased over the 3 assignments, students found that the third assignment, being the most applicable assignment, was most engaging, interesting, and most fruitful to learn. So you can see the rate of the orange, which is interest, increased as we went on in the assignments, even though it increased in difficulty. So that's also an important sign for me to reflect and learn from as well. Thank you, Mark. The next one. Okay, so just to quickly summarize, so in terms of the scaffolding, having a good balance between teacher, social, and cognitive presences are really important to engage the students in learning and motivate them to learn throughout the whole semester. So we have 48 hours of instructions in total. So it's important for them to maintain that level of interest, even though we were not connected face to face. So yeah, having the, very importantly, as I say in the second point, the instructor student facilitation as well as the peer-peer interactions are important. And the third point is that, as I said before, the cognitive engagement is just as important, because when students cannot engage in the content, whether it's the content or the academic literacies that we teach them, they would not be able to engage in learning and lose interest. At some point, as especially as we compete with other courses that are in the core modules. Yeah, so just wanted to share that. Thank you very much. That's the end of my sharing. Any questions? Or we do questions at the end?
Thank you very much, Mark and Misty, for your wonderful presentation. It's terrific to learn about what you have done at your university, and it's a very impressive presentation. And I like all the points you mentioned in your presentation, particularly modality, Mark, because I had written a paper about modality as well, and how to use modality to write written feedback, and you link us to communicative moves. That's wonderful. And Mr. you share lots about cognitive presence and about psychology and student engagement. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bao Tai, for your very nice comments.